So a couple reporters gathering in the White House in the briefing room, and we'll get you there as soon as that gets underway after President Zelensky with some very strong words at the UN Security Council a short time ago saying, are you ready to close the UN? If the answer is no, act immediately against Russia. Former ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley, joins me now on set. Great to have you here in New York, Ambassador. Thank you for being with us.
Great to be with you, Martha.
So I want to play a little exchange. This is the Russian representative and Linda Thomas Greenfield, who took your position as ambassador to the United Nations. This is what they both said there this morning at the meeting. Let's take a listen.
We're told that there can be no Nazis in Ukraine. However, we know very well that not only are they there, but unfortunately they are running the show.
Russia is using its membership on the Human Rights Council as a platform for propaganda. Every lie we hear from the Russian representative is more evidence that they do not belong on the Human Rights Council.
What do you think of all this, Ambassador?
I have dealt with that Russian ambassador many times. They will say whatever they need to deflect off of their irresponsibilities and their immoral actions. And I think that not only should they not be on the Human Rights Council, they shouldn't be on the Security Council, period. They shouldn't even be able to have a veto at this point when you look at the genocide that's happened on the streets of Ukraine.
So how does a member, I don't think anyone's ever, all those members have been in place since the very beginning, right? Would that ever happen, that they would be booted off the Security Council?
No, they've never done that. But what else has to happen to get that to happen? You cannot look at those people who literally were executed on the streets, raped, murdered, some in front of their children, and then say, oh, but this is one of 5 countries that will have a veto on everything that affects the world.
They're going to pass judgment on the rest of the world. I want to take a look at this Wall Street Journal editorial quote from today, The Consequences of War Crimes. And it talks about calling it exactly that, and says that the indictments should name individuals and specific crimes that occurred under their command. The names and charges, once announced, are sure to become known to the Russian forces. Perhaps it will concentrate minds about the dirty war they have been asked to prosecute and the trouble that Mr. Putin has put them in. Your thoughts?
Well, first of all, is he a war criminal? Yes. But what does that mean at the end of the day? We shouldn't spin our wheels sitting there trying to define whether he's a war criminal. He definitely is. He has been for years. This is nothing new, because we know that, he's not a member of the International Criminal Court. It's unlikely he would get prosecuted even through all of this. So why don't we focus on what's really going to hurt him? Sanction the energy companies. Bottom line, it's unthinkable that Biden hasn't done that. It's the one sucker punch you could give him. And they should be doing that now without hesitation. Send the planes, send the equipment, sanction the energy companies, and let's help the Ukrainians win this fight for freedom.
Yeah, and I want to ask you more about those sanctions, because I think there are more sanctions coming this week. But just to show everyone at home what we're hearing from the Russian officials. This is Dmitry Peskov, who is the longtime spokesperson for Vladimir Putin, and he's a little peeved about our war manners, about the way that President Biden talks about Putin. Watch this.
The personal insults of the Russia's president continue, and this is bad. We think this is unacceptable and unworthy of the U.S. president.
It just shocks the conscience when you hear, you're looking at these images, which they say, by the way, are just hoaxes, fakes. The bodies that you're seeing aren't real. The hands sticking out of dirt, buried bodies, mayors. I saw a mayor and her husband and her child all thrown into a pit. It's disgusting. It's inhuman. And yet they're upset about the words that we're using to describe it.
Martha, that was 2 years of my life at the United Nations. And what you do is you don't pay attention to their words. You call them out over and over and over again. And, the United Nations should be acting. If you're not going to act for something like this, why do you exist?
But the only act is to kick Russia out of the Security Council. And how, from a practical perspective, I think Zelensky's right. If you can't kick them out, then you do have to dissolve this entire body.
How can you say you're an organization committed to peace and allow such a brutal dictator that's killing innocent civilians and allow that genocide to happen? How can you do that? China's doing it to the Uyghurs, but this takes it to a whole new level. So if you're not going to acknowledge China, you're not going to call out Russia, what is the point of the UN?
I think a lot of people have asked that question for a long time. right? And you can look at lots of other examples and say, well, what about China? They're also on the Security Council. With regard to the sanctions, I think $21 billion has gone into the pocket of Russia in oil and energy sales in just the past few weeks. I mean, that's enough to keep the war going for them. What needs to happen? And what do you want to hear from the president?
I think the sanctions are getting old, right? Because like now I saw one of the new sanctions is going to be on Russian investments. Nobody's running to invest in Russia. So these are all sanctions for the sake of saying you're doing sanctions. They're not doing the things that matter. Sanction the energy companies. Hit the international banking system. Right now, Biden is allowing money to flow to Russia when they are using it to kill Ukrainians. How is that okay? How is any American okay with that? We should be sanctioning the energy companies without question. I mean, even Macron said today of France, he said sanction them. You're looking at countries who are already becoming less dependent on Russia. Lithuania is, Estonia is, Latvia is, Poland is. Like, what are we waiting on? And the thing that sickens me is the EU is going to act and then Biden's going to follow. That's what he's done this entire time. He's followed other countries. Never has the U.S. followed. We've led. Where are we as a leader? We are supposed to be the number one, authority on freedom.
So, but when you look at this, it is the Wall Street Journal talked about the difficult choices that Biden faces right now. If you take a very aggressive approach and you say we're going to give them everything they need, we're going to give them, fighter jets, we're going to give them tanks, we're going to give them everything they need until Putin is pushed across that line again and all those soldiers go home. At that point, are you inviting a nuclear war? Because he will not be happy about that. And we know what an irrational actor he appears to have become over the course of this. So what would you do in Biden's shoes right now?
So if we had sanctioned before they invaded, if we had called them out and said there would be a heavy price to pay before they invaded, that wouldn't have been instigating war. That would have been preventing war. Now you're looking at this is now preventing more deaths from happening. So if we sanction the energy companies, the rest of the world would follow and sanction the energy companies. If we sent tanks and planes, the Ukrainians have already proven to the world they can fight and defend themselves. They're not asking for our American troops to be on the ground. Give it to them. Because, Martha, this is bigger than Ukraine. This is a fight for freedom. And if we don't win this fight for freedom, this will happen.
You'd give them everything they're asking for, the fighter jets, the tanks. Would you put American boots on the ground?
No, I would not put American boots on the ground. And they're not asking us to put American boots on the ground. But give them the ammunition they need to win.
And what if Putin starts firing nuclear weapons, tactical nuclear weapons into Ukraine? What then?
I mean, Putin's kind of selfish. He's scared to use nuclear weapons because he doesn't want to get killed himself, right? He's already paranoid enough. But if you run, we have run scared from Putin for too long. Stop running scared and start leading. When you lead, Putin will retreat. He's a lot of words. He said he was going to take over Russia. He said he was going to take Poland and the Baltics. He's trying, but he's getting pushed back. Look, I mean, Ukraine's already, retrieving territory back. That's remarkable. Let Ukraine win, because a win for Ukraine is a win for freedom and a win for all of us.
Nikki Haley, Ambassador, great to have you here today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.